To me, I think this might be the best episode of Lovecraft Country yet. And I was really, really curious if the show would go there when I read the book. And it was interesting because I read an interview with Misha Green in the Wrap where she talked about how she likes exploring things that are dangerous. And when she read this portion of the book, she thought, that's dangerous. We're totally going to go there. And kudos to her for going there because this was some pretty crazy stuff. The transformation scenes were fantastic as Ruby, played by Wunmi Mosaku, goes around passing as white thanks to this magic given to her by William, who has a transformation secret of his or her own. Very fascinating stuff going on in this episode, and it operates on a lot of It operates on a lot of different levels, both on a practical level and on a symbolic level, which I thought made it a lot more interesting. This was the episode next to the pilot I felt that had the most to say about race and had the most complexity from my perspective. Obviously, we had the character of Dell sort of return because it's her avatar that Ruby inhabits, and Jamie Newman, kudos to her. I was surprised at how quickly they dispatched the character in the pilot episode. I love this actress from The Deuce. She was very, very good in that show. And here, she has this challenging role, kind of a thankless role, honestly, of portraying Ruby in a white woman's skin. This black woman passing for white. And it kind of reminded me of this article I read in Huffington Post lately, or HuffPost as they go by now, where it talked about this woman who is a black woman but who passes for white and how she constantly experiences white people around her saying racist things about black people, and just kind of she's a fly on the wall hearing what white people really say about black people oftentimes when they don't realize that there's a black person in the room. And it's unfortunate that that's the experience that that woman had. And it's unfortunate even more at this time in American history to see what happens when you're a white woman and the currency of whiteness, as they refer to it in this episode, where there is this element of you can have things that you never even dreamed you could have just because you're white. And Ruby finds this to be true very, very quickly. She sees that she has so much power. She has power to get black men and boys put in prison for doing nothing. She could say anything she wants and she would be believed, and it wouldn't matter that it was completely false and that there's no evidence. She gets an assistant manager position at the store when she only really wanted a sales lady position. So things are just falling into her lap. And I think that people I saw commenting on the fact that they picked Jamie Newman for this role, and they felt that they should have picked a more attractive actress to play Ruby, since Ruby is more attractive as a black woman than she is as a white woman. I personally would say that's a little bit cruel to the actress who plays Ruby as a white person, but I would also point out, I feel like this is kind of the point. If she was this bombshell Marilyn Monroe type, then you would understand why she's getting all this favor, why all this stuff is just falling into her lap. But because she's so ordinary, because there's nothing particularly special about her, the fact that she gets all this stuff handed to her just because she's white, she's the exact same person underneath, that is kind of the point. And I think it has a lot to show about how people's persona depends a lot on insignificant things. And I'm not saying that a person's skin color is completely insignificant. Obviously, that is a huge part of your identity because it will have affected the experiences that you have, and it will be a part of your background, culturally speaking. But at the same time, Ruby is the same person whether she's in white skin or black skin. She has the same experiences. She has the same cultural background. but it completely changes the way that she acts. And this was handled a lot differently than it was in the book, because in the book, Ruby never really has this moment where she says, well, I'm better off accepting myself. I'm better off being in my own skin than passing as a white woman, even if it comes with all this privilege. But that moment never really happens in the book. In fact, she decides that she's quite fine being a white woman since it comes with all these benefits. And I can understand why they changed it, but that was a very, very gutsy decision in the book. And I can understand why it doesn't come off very well, but I think that it's very possible that someone could go either way. I think that it would be easy to miss the fact that there are multiple transformation plot lines this episode. Obviously, that was a major theme with the metamorphosis of the moths. But we see this. At first, it didn't really make sense to me what they were doing with Montrose. But again, I realized that this is another transformation plotline where he too has a separate persona, a separate identity that he hides, as does Sammy. And for both these characters, it was important to them that they have this moment of self-acceptance, and Michael K. Williams portrays this excellently in the scene where he simply lets loose and allows himself to be who he is in the scene in the club with the drag queens. There was a big twist this episode to do with the third transformation plotline, and that's obviously that William is actually not William. It's actually Christina Braithwaite putting on a male avatar, so to speak. And this is fascinating. The hints were all there for this. I feel like a lot of people, including myself, probably intuited this a little bit. Like, we could tell something was just not right with the relationship between William and Christina, and it was odd how we never saw them together. And they both have a strong resemblance, so it really made a lot of sense. We also had a lot of scenes where Christina talked about how she was, not able to be accepted as this leader because she's a woman, and you could tell that she really wishes that she had been born a son so that she could have all the rights and privileges that come with sonship to the sons of Adam. And of course, I think that this plotline hasn't really resolved yet. We don't know how Ruby is ultimately going to respond to this revelation that she's been in a relationship with Christina this whole time, and whether that will be a deal killer or not. I don't like the way that they changed some of this from the book. They made it seem almost as if Christina had forced Ruby to become this white person without asking her, whereas in the book it was made very, very clear that the character of Caleb, which is who the character of Christina is in the book, not a female character in the book, but getting on with that they made it very, very clear that she got her permission before she did this, so it wasn't somewhat of something that had been forced on her. Does Christina really, really care about Ruby? And I think that she does, because as William at one point, she says, I felt magic when there was none because of you. So to me, I think that this is a sincere affection that she has for Ruby, that she actually cares about her. And it'll be interesting to see how Ruby responds once she realizes she's been in a relationship, not with William, but with Christina. It's interesting that Jordan Patrick Smith agreed to play this role because ultimately he's, basically just an avatar for another character. There were a couple other, interesting revelations this week. Captain Lancaster appears to be some kind of Frankenstein experiment carried out by Hiram Epstein with white hands and shoulders and head on a black body. So that's weird and creepy, and I think we're probably going to see some more of that. Not exactly sure what was going on with the poor man in the closet, but I'm guessing there might be some more icky experimentation going on with that character. They're using him to try and find the loot, of course, but I think he might have been dead and resurrected based on some things they said in the conversation. Also, very, very shocking was the scene where Ruby got revenge on the racist person in charge at the store who tried to rape her fellow black coworker in the alley. And man, I feel like this was kind of extreme. I get that the guy was a racist and a attempted rapist, but let's not kid ourselves. She brutally assaulted him, and I don't know. I feel like that seems like a step too far. But again, I understand that this is a complicated situation and that this character was obviously a terrible person. I'm not wanting to be too defensive of him, but at the same time, I feel like this kind of response doesn't seem completely justified from my perspective. But interesting episode. I thought that the transformation scenes were amazing. The special effects and the gore that they managed to pull off was really, really well done. I felt that overall, I mean, there was some stuff with Atticus and Letitia this episode, but it was pretty forgettable on the whole. I'm interested in the tease for next episode that we finally get to see who this woman is that he's been talking to on the phone and what she told him. Obviously, he decoded a message in the book that said D-I-E, die, possibly, but it also could be something else. So, again, great soundtrack, great visuals. Overall, very, very, very different from last week's episode, and that's where I feel like this show might lose people, is that you just can't tell what you're going to get on a weekly basis. Last week was Goonies. This episode was much more transformational horror, very, very horror and horrific. So I'm not sure how people are going to take that. But overall, I thought this was really, really strong and had a lot of interesting themes, moments, and ideas. So I enjoyed it. But let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing so you can see upcoming reviews of other shows, movies, books, whatever I'm reviewing at a given day. And if you'd give me a like, I'd appreciate it. And as always, you can watch more videos right now.